As every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth. I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family.
What if the royal family's most shocking betrayal happened right under our noses? What if Queen Camilla secretly tried to remove Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte from King Charles's will, only to be caught red-handed and banished from the palace? The whispers started before dawn, spreading through the royal halls like wildfire, and what they revealed has left the monarchy shaken to its core. This isn't just palace drama. This is a story that could change the future of the British crown forever. Stay with us to uncover the shocking truth behind this royal scandal that has everyone talking. The morning that changed everything. The first rays of sunlight crept through the tall windows of the royal chambers, painting the walls in pale gold. The palace was unusually quiet, too quiet for a place that normally hummed with activity. King Charles stirred in his bed, his eyes opening to an unsettling silence that made his chest feel heavy. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. He rose slowly, the weight of his silk robe settling around his shoulders like the invisible burden he carried every day. The familiar rooms, grand and decorated with centuries of history, offered no comfort this morning. Every step toward the sitting area felt deliberate, as if each footfall was carrying him closer to a truth he wasn't prepared to face. His mind drifted to Charlotte and Louis, as it often did in quiet moments like these. Charlotte, with her sharp intelligence and natural grace, always asking thoughtful questions about the crown jewels and royal traditions. Louis, with his infectious laughter and boundless energy, bringing joy to even the most formal palace occasions.
He's the apple of his mama's eye, and here's why Louis will always be her baby.
They were the beating heart of the family, the precious treasures he hoped the world would embrace with open arms. He thought about the afternoons they spent together in the garden, Charlotte's small hands holding a teacup that seemed far too large for her delicate fingers. Louis tugging at his sleeve with excitement, eager to show him some new discovery among the roses. In those precious moments, he wasn't the King of England, he was simply a grandfather, a role that filled him with warmth no crown could ever provide. But that warmth faded quickly as he reached the breakfast table. The chair opposite him stood empty. The gleaming silverware was perfectly arranged. The fine porcelain plates were set with military precision, but there was no sign of Camilla anywhere. She was never late for their morning meal together. Not without sending word, not without some explanation. He sat down, his fingers drumming nervously against the crisp white linen tablecloth. Where could she be? He murmured to himself, his voice echoing in the spacious dining room. A footman entered quietly, bowed respectfully, but offered no answers to the unspoken question hanging in the air. Minutes crawled by, each tick of the ornate clock on the mantelpiece growing louder in the silence. Charles lifted his teacup, but the Earl Grey tasted bitter on his tongue. His thoughts refused to settle. Was she ill? Had something happened? Or was this absence something more deliberate, more calculated? The door opened again, revealing one of his most trusted aides. The man's face was pale, his usual composed demeanor replaced by something that looked almost like fear. He walked forward with measured steps, each one making the air in the room feel thicker and more oppressive. In his trembling hands was a sealed envelope, thick and cream-colored, bearing a wax seal that Charles recognized immediately. The aide bowed low, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your Majesty, this arrived for you." It was marked as urgent and confidential. Charles accepted the envelope, feeling its weight, not just the physical weight of expensive paper, but the emotional weight of whatever secrets it contained. His thumb traced the familiar seal, and for a long moment, he simply stared at it, afraid to break it open. He looked up at his aide, searching the man's face for clues. "Who delivered this?" The aide shook his head nervously. It came directly from the Royal Legal Office, sir. Hand-delivered with strict instructions that only you should read it. That word, directly, sent a chill down Charles's spine. He dismissed the aide with a slight nod, and the man left quickly, closing the door with a soft click that seemed to seal Charles alone with whatever revelation awaited him. The document that shattered trust. The wax seal cracked under Charles's thumb, breaking apart like his world was about to. The envelope opened to reveal thick official paper, the kind reserved for the most important legal documents in the kingdom. He unfolded it slowly, the crisp sound of expensive parchment whispering through the silent room. His eyes immediately found the heading, and his breath caught in his throat. Proposed amendments to the last will and testament of His Majesty, King Charles III. For a moment, his heart stopped beating. Amendments? He had authorized no changes, requested no modifications to his carefully crafted will. He scanned the document quickly, his eyes moving faster as panic began to set in. Then he saw them, or rather, he saw their absence. Charlotte's name was gone. Louis's name had vanished completely. The sections where he had carefully ensured their futures were now blank spaces, clean and empty, as if his beloved grandchildren had been erased from existence. His hands began to shake as he held the paper. He read the lines again, then a third time, hoping desperately that his eyes were playing tricks on him. But the cold, legal language remained unchanged. The document clearly stated that Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis would no longer be direct beneficiaries of the royal inheritance. At the bottom of the page, in handwriting he knew as well as his own, was a brief note to the royal legal team. Please proceed with these adjustments as we discussed. This will simplify matters considerably. The signature was unmistakably Camilla's elegant script. A wave of shock rolled over him like ice water. His beloved wife had gone behind his back, making decisions about his most precious family members without his knowledge or consent. The betrayal cut deeper than any political scandal or public criticism ever could. The paper trembled in his grasp as memories flooded back. Conversations he had dismissed as casual remarks now took on sinister new meaning. He remembered a rainy afternoon months earlier when Camilla had mentioned simplifying the inheritance structure. At the time, he thought she meant reducing ceremonial expenses or streamlining administrative processes. "Charles," she had said while sipping her afternoon tea, "it might be wise to focus the inheritance where it will truly strengthen the monarchy. Too many divisions can weaken the whole structure." He had barely looked up from his papers, assuming she was speaking theoretically about royal finances. Now those innocent-sounding conversations revealed their true purpose. She hadn't been making casual suggestions. She had been laying the groundwork for this betrayal, testing his reactions, preparing to act without his blessing. Charles set the document on the table, his fingers pressed flat against it, as if he could somehow hold back the reality of what he was reading. His jaw tightened as anger began to replace the initial shock. How dare she make decisions about his family? How dare she try to determine the futures of two innocent children? Charlotte's curious questions about palace history, Louis's delighted squeals during their garden walks. These precious moments flashed through his mind, making the betrayal sting even more intensely. What had they done to deserve being written out of their grandfather's legacy? What crime had two small children committed beyond being loved by a man who refused to play political games with family bonds? The confrontation that ended everything. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the grand sitting room, but Charles felt no warmth from its golden rays. He sat rigidly in his chair, the damning document folded neatly in his hands, waiting. The ornate clock above the fireplace marked each second with mathematical precision, but time seemed to crawl as he prepared for what might be the most difficult conversation of his reign. When the door finally opened, Camilla entered with her usual graceful stride. She wore a soft, cream-colored suit with pearls at her throat, her hair perfectly styled as always. Her expression was light, almost cheerful, as if she had just returned from a pleasant afternoon with friends. "Charles," she said warmly, her smile bright and genuine, "you look terribly serious. Has something upset you?" He didn't return her smile. Instead, his eyes fixed on her with laser intensity, studying every detail of her face. The room felt heavy, charged with unspoken tension. "Why?" His voice was low and controlled, but it carried an unmistakable edge of steel. She paused mid-step, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. "Why what, darling?" "You know exactly what I mean," he replied, his tone growing colder with each word. "Why did you do it? Why did you go behind my back?" Charles lifted the folded document, holding it between them like evidence in a courtroom. "This, the changes to my will, the removal of Charlotte and Louis, explain it to me." For just a moment, something shifted in her eyes, a flash of recognition, perhaps even guilt. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked further into the room. "I thought it was necessary," she said carefully, "for the good of the monarchy. We must be practical, Charles. Too many divisions of inheritance weaken the institution we're trying to protect." He stood slowly, the late afternoon sunlight falling across his face and highlighting the fury burning in his eyes. "Practical?" His voice was barely controlled. "These are my grandchildren, Camilla. They are not budget line items to be eliminated. They are not political problems to be solved." She held his gaze, lifting her chin with defiant dignity. "They will be well provided for through William. They have titles, influence, and more opportunities than most children could dream of. This change simply focuses our resources where they will do the most good for the Crown's future." "The Crown's future?" Charles's voice rose just enough to make the servants near the doorway exchange worried glances. "The Crown's future is built on family loyalty, on love, on the bonds that hold us together through every crisis. You speak of strength, but you cannot see that what you have done weakens the very foundation we stand on." The room seemed to shrink around them as the weight of their words pressed down. Camilla crossed her arms, her voice taking on a defensive tone. "I was thinking of what will preserve the monarchy for decades to come. Personal feelings cannot always guide these decisions." "Personal feelings?" Charles stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "Is that what you call a grandfather's love for his grandchildren? Is that what you call ensuring two innocent children have their rightful place in their family's legacy?" The servants who had been hovering near the door quietly slipped away, closing it behind them and leaving the royal couple alone in their confrontation. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. "You could have come to me," Charles said, his voice dropping to an icy whisper that somehow carried more power than any shout. "You could have shared your concerns, presented your arguments, trusted me to make the right decision. Instead, you went behind my back. You forged ahead with plans in my name, as if you had the authority to decide my family's fate. I acted because I knew you wouldn't make the hard choice yourself," Camilla replied, her composure beginning to crack. "You are too emotionally attached to see what is necessary for the institution." Charles moved even closer, his voice becoming deadly quiet. "Do not mistake love for weakness. Do not mistake family loyalty for poor judgment. And do not ever assume that you can make decisions about my legacy without my knowledge or consent." For the first time since entering the room, uncertainty flickered across Camilla's face. "You're acting as if I've committed some unforgivable sin," she said, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "You have," he replied without hesitation. "You have betrayed my trust, gone against my wishes, and attempted to harm two children who have done nothing wrong except be born into this family." The silence that followed was deafening. Neither moved. The document in Charles's hand seemed to pulse with the power to destroy everything they had built together, the decision that shocked the world. The weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air between them, but Charles had moved beyond anger into something far more dangerous: cold, calculated resolve. He turned slightly away from Camilla, as if looking at her had become too painful to bear. The golden afternoon light had shifted, casting long shadows across the room that seemed to mirror the darkness settling over their relationship. "This will not stand," he said finally, his voice carrying the absolute authority of a man who had made an irreversible decision. "Not today, not ever. The changes you attempted to make will be reversed immediately." Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line, but she remained silent, perhaps sensing that anything she said would only make the situation worse. Charles continued, his tone growing more formal with each word. "But that is not enough. What you have done cannot be undone with simple corrections to legal documents. You have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, violated a trust that cannot be rebuilt." He turned to face her fully, his eyes holding a finality that made her breath catch. "You must leave. Today. Now." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Leave," she whispered, as if saying it quietly might somehow make it less real. "I have never been more serious about anything in my life," Charles replied. "This is not a decision made in anger, though anger certainly played a part. This is about protecting what matters most: my family, my grandchildren, and the integrity of the crown itself." Camilla's face went pale. "You would banish me over this? After everything we have been through together, all the challenges we have faced side by side?" "You made that choice when you decided to act without me," Charles said, his voice steady despite the emotional storm raging within him. "You made that choice when you put your political calculations above the welfare of two innocent children." She took a step backward, as if the air between them had suddenly become too thick to breathe. "I did what I thought was best for all of us," she said weakly. "And in doing so," Charles replied, "you forgot the most important truth of all. This family is not a business to be managed or a political entity to be optimized. It is built on love, loyalty, and the sacred bonds between generations. Those bonds are not negotiable." He walked to the door and opened it, revealing two senior staff members who had been waiting discreetly in the hallway. "Please see that Her Majesty's belongings are packed immediately. Arrangements have been made for her relocation to the country residence." Camilla's composure finally cracked completely. "So this is how it ends?" she asked, her voice breaking. "After all these years, you would throw me away like a piece of unwanted furniture?" Charles paused at the threshold, his hand resting on the doorframe. For a moment, the mask of royal authority slipped, revealing the pain of a man who had been forced to choose between his marriage and his family. "That depends entirely on whether you understand what you have done and why it was so profoundly wrong." She opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came. The enormity of her mistake and its consequences seemed to finally register in her eyes. "For now," Charles continued, "separation is necessary. The future will depend on many things: your actions, your understanding, and most importantly, whether you can accept that some decisions are mine alone to make." With that, he stepped out of the room, leaving Camilla standing alone in the fading afternoon light. The golden sun that had seemed so warm when she entered now felt cold and distant, much like the man she had married and the life she had just lost. Within hours, news of the Queen's sudden departure from the palace began to leak to the press. By evening, every major news outlet in Britain was running headlines about a royal crisis and unprecedented palace drama. The carefully constructed image of a united royal family was crumbling in real time, and the repercussions would be felt far beyond the palace walls. The story that had begun with a secret document and a betrayed trust was now public knowledge, and the British monarchy faced one of its greatest challenges in modern history. The question on everyone's mind was simple but profound. Can the royal family survive this scandal? Or will Charles's decision to choose his grandchildren over his wife tear the institution apart forever? The answer to that question would determine not just the fate of Charles and Camilla, but the future of the British crown itself. And as the palace gates closed behind Camilla's departure, everyone, from the humblest servant to the most powerful politician, understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The children at the center of this storm, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, remained blissfully unaware of the battle that had been fought on their behalf. They continued playing in the palace gardens, their laughter echoing through the halls, where their grandfather had just made the most difficult decision of his life. In protecting their future, he had sacrificed his present. But for Charles, it was a price worth paying. What do you think about King Charles's dramatic decision? Was he right to choose his grandchildren over his wife? Or did he go too far in banishing Camilla from the palace? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more exclusive royal family updates and behind-the-scenes stories that you won't find anywhere else.